Hello and welcome back to Archetype Builds. Today we are ranking the Ranger subclasses as to how well they fit the 7 roles of the party. So we've done a lot of classes on this channel and we've still got a few classes left to go. So let's dig into it, starting with the Beastmaster. I'm just going to talk about the Tasha's Beastmaster. I don't think that the old 2014 Player's Handbook Beastmaster is being used anymore at any tables. So for our Tasha's version, we're going to have our Primal Companion. This is, of course, the beast that we are the Beastmaster of. We're going to get to choose between Beast of the Land, Sea, and Sky. These are 3 different templates that come up. If you want to focus on damage, then Beast of the Land, I think, is probably your best bet. But you do have Beast of the Sea with some swim speed and Beast of the Sky, which can be useful if you want to keep your pet alive and also have the utility of flying. You can take a bonus action on each of your turns to command your beast to attack, and you can also forego one of your own attacks in order to encourage the beast. These beast attacks are scaling based on your wisdom modifier to hit, and then your proficiency bonus to damage. Which means if you're playing a very low dexterity ranger, this Beastmaster might be applicable for you because you won't be applying your dexterity to very much of the beast's stats, right? It's all about your wisdom, all about your character level. You can use a first level spell slot to revive your beast. Otherwise, this is essentially a once per long rest beast, which doesn't have an expiration date. The nice part is you can keep your beast around with you all day, kind of an extra member of the party, which has a great amount of utility benefits. This is also a pretty good infiltrator because you can send your beast in to do stuff. Unfortunately, the beast doesn't have, unless you are taking specific spells, doesn't have the ability to channel those senses directly back to you. So you are sort of relying on your beast to go and check things out and then find a way to communicate that back to the party, which is tough. At 7th level, you get exceptional training for your beast, which means that you can take a bonus action to command it to dash, disengage, or help, as opposed to taking the attack action, which was the only option available before. In my opinion, that is a pretty bad overall feature. Part of the reason why is I don't think there should be a restriction on whether the beast can use the help action or the disengage or dash action. It seems a little bit odd to me that that would even be a restriction that is there in the first place. And then being given access to that, especially if you primarily were using your beast for combat, which kind of feels like what you would do with a beast or a Beastmaster Ranger, just means this won't come up very much. It's also going to give them magical damage for the purposes of overcoming resistances and immunity, which is just this tax you got to pay to remain competitive in the game wherein magic items are the expected norm. So this is a very weak 7th level feature, and that absolutely cripples this subclass because, of course, you need to pack your good features into the early game, right? So you've got your beast, that's good, but now it's just kind of, you're not building on that very much as you go along. At 11th level, we are getting Bestial Fury, which is going to allow your beast to take 2 attacks when it takes the attack action. So that's multi-attack as a bonus action, but at 11th level. And it is still using those beast stats, which may or may not be better than your own. At 15th level, we get Share Spells, which is a really fun feature. It basically says when you cast a spell targeting yourself, your beast can also benefit from it. I really like this feature, but at a 15th level, like subclass capstone, it really does not pack the punch that we would need for this class. So, what do we get in total? Well, we do get a fair amount of utility here. Having an additional member of the party who can do stuff, being able to consistently use your bonus action to make that beast do things is nice. The rest of it is basically damage, right? Our Bestial Fury is damage. Most of the changes to the Primal Companion is damage. So let's take a look at the damage. Getting an extra attack as a bonus action is definitely beneficial. And these damage numbers are pretty comparable to a normal weapon attack. Being able to forego your own attacks to have them make additional attacks and then also take a bonus action attack means that your beast could potentially be taking up to 4 attacks a turn at level 11. That's quite good, right? Any class that is dealing 4 attacks a turn is doing decently. But it's very hard to get any better than that. This beast will not benefit from feats that you select. This beast will not benefit from magical items. This beast will not benefit from, for the most part, from buffs that your allies are casting on the beast. It's sort of a ceiling, right? Now you as the ranger, if you reallocated, if you put your wisdom score and your dexterity instead, grabbed some archery supplies and just fired arrows, you would be in a position to be making, 2, maybe crossbow expert, right, 3 attacks a turn, probably able to deal more damage and use more magic items and like generally have a greater ability to pump out that damage yourself. So the base ranger class is probably higher damage than the Beastmaster Ranger. But the Beastmaster Ranger can, of course, just ignore their beast and just be a base ranger. So 0 points for damage and 0 points for utility, which means this class is baseline. So, Drakewarden from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, right? This is a subclass that actually, when I first went through these, Fizban's wasn't out yet, so I didn't have the subclass rankings for, and I have since evaluated the class. Draconic Gift at 3rd level is going to give you the Thaumaturgy cantrip and Tongue of Dragons. These are primarily flavorful, although I will say Thaumaturgy is one of those cantrips that has a lot of very small applications and is kind of nice for rounding the utility. The big get, of course, is your Drake Companion, which is a draconic creature that comes along with you on your adventures, and much like the Beastmaster, is going to be there all of the time. So we say the Drake remains until it is reduced to 0 hit points. You use this feature to summon the Drake again, or you die. So that there's no time constraint, right? And those are some pretty big deal. So it dies, you die, or you summon another Drake. So this Drake is going to stick around. What does the Drake do? Well, much like the Beastmaster Ranger, the Drake is going to take the dodge action unless you take a bonus action to command it to do stuff. What we are really having to look at is what stuff can it do? One thing I do want to note is if you are incapacitated, this restriction lifts. So you can now command the Drake if you are incapacitated. It's kind of a small thing, but I actually really like the idea that like if you start making death saving throws, your Drake is now like under your command and can do stuff. It's just this slight change that is better than the Beastmaster Ranger comparison. So let's take a look at this Drake. We see that the Drake is going to come from this templated stat block. Armor class is equal to 14 plus your proficiency bonus. Hit points equal 5 plus 5 times your ranger level. This is actually better than the Beast of the Land, which is the tanky option for the Beastmaster. So already we're starting to see some improvements here. You're also going to get to choose a background for the Drake, which is going to give it an immunity to a certain damage type, and that's going to play later into the class features that you've got. And then it's got this bite attack. So this bite attack is its main attack. It says 3 plus your proficiency bonus, so that's pretty much tracking with like an okay, point by stat block. We're dealing 1d6 plus proficiency bonus in piercing damage. So, okay damage, not that great. We are going to get reactions. Infused strikes when another creature within 30 feet of the Drake hits a target with a weapon attack. That Drake can infuse the strike with its essence, causing the target to take an extra 1d6 damage. So, the right way to think about this Drake is every turn, you're using a bonus action, and it's doing 2d6 plus proficiency bonus in damage, which is okay. It's fine, reasonable. So the Drake is not a big damage guy. So what do we make of this? Well, I would say this is not better than baseline in terms of damage. I don't know the degree to which this is helpful in terms of tanking either, because the issue is when you are tanking, generally speaking, you want to be able to take that damage and not lose your effectiveness, right? If you can take a bunch of damage but then lay on the floor dead, you are not helping. So the fact that the Drake will die at some point, 15 health, 20 health, 25 health in, and then you're going to lose that extra damage each round, it's kind of a shame compared to you just focusing on your own survivability, wading into the melee on your own with some decent armor, and then kind of maintaining that damage as you're getting hit. So I'm not a big fan of that aspect of it. So far, not a lot of wins for the Drakewarden, but let's check out that level 7 feature and contrast it with that Beastmaster's level 7. So we see that when you summon your Drake, it grows wings on its back and gains a flying speed equal to its walking speed. Now we have the utility of that Beast of the Air without sacrificing any of the stats for it. We also read, Drake grows to medium size and you can mount it, it just can't fly while you're mounting it. So that's kind of neat, utility. And Magic Fang, the Drake's bite deals an extra 1d6 damage of the type chosen for its essence, and you, the ranger, gain resistance to the damage type chosen for the Drake's essence. So if you're summoning a red dragon Drake, you get fire resistance. If you are summoning a white dragon Drake, you gain ice resistance, right? Or cold resistance. So a resistance to a damage type for you, which is a big get, that's a nice feature. Plus 1d6 of extra damage every turn as your bonus action when it's making that bite attack, which is good. The utility of always having a mount nearby, which is good. The utility of having it being able to fly, which is great. Also, instead of just reviving it with a first level spell slot, you can fully resummon it. So now if it is disintegrated, first level spell slot brings that Drake back, which means that's the best use of your first level spell slots by far. So you are really cooking with gas here at level 7. I think you definitely surpassed the Beastmaster at this level in terms of damage and in terms of tankiness and utility. At level 11, when the Beastmaster is getting that extra attack for their beast, we are getting our breath ability. So either we or our Drake can exhale a breath, we can choose our damage type, and it doesn't have to match the dragon's essence, which is kind of lame, in my opinion, right? Like, that's kind of lame, that like, anyway. That's fine. It's not fine. It's bad. Each creature in the cone, dexterity save, or take 8d6 damage on a failed save. So, half as much on a successful one. 8d6 is a lot of damage. That's pretty darn good. We are in the fireball territory, and it says that we can redo this with a third level spell slot. So it is sort of the cost of fireball for the damage of fireball. But we get to choose the damage type, and either us or our dragon can do it, which means there's a little bit of flexibility in our targeting. One of the things that this really opens up is, of course, the ability for the dragon to fly into a specific spot and breathe it down, which is not as flexible as just having fireball when you can like pinpoint a location and make it explode. But, I mean, that area of effect damage has the potential to really shut down certain encounters. And 8d6 damage, even assuming half of people succeed on their saving throws, we're talking about a one-turn burst of damage that is on par with the fighter with Action Surge, right? So I think that this is quite good. And of course, at 11th level, we've got some third level spell slots to burn if we want to do this a couple times. I'm going to say this actually is a bonus to damage that is really significant. More significant, in my opinion, than the base ranger would be capable of otherwise. And then Perfected Bond, extra damage on the bite, big and large, and you can fly with it at 15th level, which is so late, but you can fly on your dragon finally at 15th level. And then Reflexive Resistance, when you or the Drake take damage within 30 feet of each other, you can use a reaction to give yourself resistance to that type of damage. So now you're just completely ignoring the whole dragon thing and just reducing damage, which is great. I think that this 15th level feature could have potentially at an earlier level made this like a tanking subclass, but here at 15th level, it's mostly fluff. Our Fey Wanderer is going to have a couple things going on at 3rd level. They're going to have Dreadful Strikes, which is going to deal an additional 1d4 psychic damage to the target once per turn when you hit them with a weapon. This is directing you towards you yourself using weapons to attack the enemy, and doing this once per turn, a single d4, is pretty minor. We do see it's going to go up to d6 at level 11, which is also too small of a change. That's an on average increase of 1 damage per turn. It's not worthwhile to be taking this for its damage bonus. We are going to get Fey Wanderer magic, and several of these ranger subclasses will get these spells that are specific to the subclass. So we're getting things like Charm Person, Misty Step, which is a great spell, Dispel Magic, Dimension Door, which is fantastic, and Mislead at a higher level. The big deal here is Otherworldly Glamour, which says your Fey qualities will give you a supernatural charm. When you make a charisma check, you get a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier. The reason this is significant is that we do have the Negotiator role. This is sitting on the table, and this is a fantastic way to buff up your negotiation. If you are maxing your wisdom, that's fantastic. It's like you're a charisma-based character, and that bumps you up to an A in negotiation. But of course, you can also take charisma. This is not saying that you replace charisma. It's saying you add your wisdom. So you can add charisma and wisdom, plus this is giving you a proficiency in one of those major skills. So you take proficiency in persuasion, you get a +2 here at 3rd level. Let's say you've got a +3 charisma, a +4 wisdom. You're looking at a +9 to that roll. That's a very good negotiator. It's a very good negotiator. I think this is quite fantastic, and as you go along and get more feats, I think you can build a really phenomenal negotiator out of this class. Beguiling Twist at 7th level is going to give you a kind of Charm Frighten utility. What it says is, you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, and whenever you or a creature you see within 120 feet of you succeeds on a saving throw against being charmed or frightened, you use your reaction to force a different creature that you can see within 120 feet of you to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, and if it fails, it's charmed or frightened by you. So essentially, clear the clutter of the language. When you or an ally succeed on a save against charm or frighten, you can charm or frighten someone else. It only costs you a reaction, and the charmed and frightened condition are quite potent. So the question is, what is your spell save DC? This is a class that I think lends itself more towards a wisdom-based ranger. So far, that's been 3 for 3, in my opinion, on wisdom-based rangers. But really, I think if you invest in your spell save DC, this could be quite potent. It requires you and your allies to be making saves against being charmed or frightened on a regular basis. And I don't know how often that's the case for you, but that's what it's required in order for this utility to be good. At 11th level, you get a feature that I think is just bonkers. Fey Reinforcements is going to give you the spell Summon Fey for free. You can cast it once without expending a spell slot, which is phenomenal. And you regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. The other thing is, you can remove concentration from it. So you don't have to concentrate on the Fey that you've summoned, which is crazy. And Summon Fey is like one of the better summoning spells out there. Its duration becomes 1 minute for that casting, so it's essentially a battle companion. But this is really, really good. The Summon Fey spell lends itself to utility. The damage is okay. And then at 15th level, you are getting a Misty Step number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier for free, which is great, so you're teleporting all around, and you can take an ally with you, which we love to see. That's really nifty. In all, I love this subclass. I think the damage is quite lackluster, but I think the utility really is there. The negotiation really is there. And it's just a great addition to the roster of Ranger subclasses. I really appreciate what it brings to the party. All right, Gloomstalker. This subclass has a bit of a reputation, so let's see how well it holds up. Firstly, we're going to look at our Gloomstalker magic. Our special spells that we're going to get for this include Disguise Self, Rope Trick, Fear, and Greater Invisibility. All bangers of spells. Especially, I think, Disguise Self has incredible utility. Rope Trick is very useful in certain situations as well. But things like Fear are fantastic CC, like ability to break up enemies so you're only fighting a couple at a time. And Greater Invisibility is obviously one of the best spells that you can get as a kind of gish character, especially one with ranged attacks. That's a good start. Then we're looking at Dread Ambusher, which has a bunch of components. Firstly, you're going to add your Wisdom modifier to your initiative rolls. Initiative rolls are very important rolls. A lot happens as a result of how initiative is rolled, so this is quite good. If this and Disguise Self as a 3rd level spell were the only features, I'd say it'd be about a par Ranger subclass, but we got a lot more to go. At the start of your first turn in each combat, your walking speed increases by 10 feet, which lasts until the end of your turn. If you take the attack action on that turn, you can make an additional weapon attack as a part of that action. And if the attack hits, the target takes an extra 1d8 of damage of the weapon's type. So you're getting an extra weapon attack, and on top of that, you're getting an extra d8 of damage on the first turn of combat. The thing about the first turn of combat is that every combat has one. So this comes up a lot. This is consistently going to open you guys up with a bang, start the momentum going in one direction, and obviously that death spiral, when you've got a bunch of enemies, you know, they're strongest at the beginning because there's lots of them dealing lots of damage, but as they start to die off, they also deal less damage, and they die off more easily, and you just wrap them up. This helps to kickstart that death spiral. It's very good on the damage front. I weight first round damage a lot more than I weight general turn after turn damage. So for instance, we compare to just last subclass, the Fey Wanderer's 1d4 per turn is never going to be as good as 1d8 on the first round, right? Because even though after 2 rounds you've totaled up the same number of damage basically, that first round might have allowed you to take out like an enemy spellcaster or an enemy ranged attacker, and now they are not putting out the damage that they were putting out. But that's not all for the 3rd level. We are also getting Umbral Sight, which is going to give us crazy darkness, dark vision out to 60 feet, and if you've already got it, increases by another 30. And then for the purposes of other creatures that have dark vision, which is a very common trait, very, very common trait, for the purposes of other creatures who rely on dark vision, you are invisible. So you cannot be seen by creatures basically in darkness, which is wildly good. Wildly good. And don't forget that invisible has mechanical benefits as well. That means you are attacking with advantage. And by the way, in that first round, you're making additional attacks with advantage. Very, very strong feature. In terms of a one-man killing machine, the Gloomstalker is up there with the absolute best. I think that this is a phenomenal infiltrator, having that focus on dexterity as a ranger, as like a damage dealing ranger, gives you a good stealth score, and then being invisible, of course, massively beneficial. Having all of that extra damage piled onto that first turn is quite good, and you're immediately getting some utility from your spells. So we are off to a phenomenal start with the Gloomstalker. As we move to 7th level, we are starting to pump the brakes a little bit. Iron Mind is going to give you proficiency in wisdom saving throws, which is good. That's very good. And then it says if you've already got it, basically multi-class shenanigans, right? So proficiency in wisdom saves come up a lot. If you fail a wisdom save, it's usually something real bad, like the Charmed or Frightened condition or outright mind control. So this is quite nice to have, but it is a defensive feature, right? So we are starting to spread our skills across a lot of different areas. At 11th level, Stalker's Flurry is going to give you a redo once per turn on one of your attacks. So if you miss, you can make another attack roll, which is really great, right? That's sort of like advantage, just on demand once per turn on one of your attacks, and you can use it reactively. So if you hit an attack, then great, you don't need to use it. If you don't hit an attack, you can pop it on. So it's better than advantage once a turn, which is quite good. Obviously, that's going to increase your damage because it's going to increase the rate at which you are hitting. It also goes very well with things like the sharpshooter feat from basic 5e, where you are subtracting 5 from your plus to hit. So if your advantage from being invisible didn't help you to hit, now this is going to give you an extra redo and then increase the chance that you are getting those plus 10s off. And then Shadowy Dodge basically allows you to pose a disadvantage on a attack roll against you as a reaction if they didn't have advantage on the roll. So another defensive feature here. The thing that is really good about the Gloomstalker Ranger is its compatibility with sustained damage over time, placing an emphasis on first round damage dealing. First round damage dealing is very important. It's got some neat utility and is one of the best infiltrators in the game because of its Umbral Sight stipulation. So if you want someone to sneak into a place, someone with Disguise Self, Rope Trick, Invisibility in Darkness, and even greater invisibility at a higher level, I don't think there are very many characters that are better than that, period. Whole stop. So S tier Infiltrator. It is also amongst the best damage dealers that is available in the martial classes, right? Because of that front round bonus, because of the extra attacks, because of the ability to reroll, the inherent advantage that comes from your inability to be seen. Just a phenomenal class in those areas. We do get a little bit of a break by having it spread out its other features amongst various things like survivability and utility, but really, really strong subclass. The Horizon Walker also exists. We are going to get some Horizon Walker spells, protection from evil and good, which is pretty situational, Misty Step, which is great, Haste, which we love, Banishment, of course, incredible CC. We can jump into our third level features. We've got Detect Portal, which is sadly a bit of a ribbon feature. This basically allows you to detect where portals are within 1 mile of you for whatever it is worth. Planar Warrior is coming along to do a little bit more work here. What we read is, as a bonus action, choose one creature you see within 30 feet of you. The next time you hit that creature on this turn with a weapon attack, you do an extra d8 force damage, and you can make all of the damage from the attack be force damage, which is, of course, not really going to be resisted. So you overcome resistances and add a d8. It costs your bonus action, and it must be on the turn that you use that bonus action. So, okay. Ethereal Step allows you to cast Etherealness with this feature without expending a spell slot, ending at the end of your current turn. Etherealness essentially makes you intangible. You can pass through walls and stuff like that. This is the type of utility that I think comes up in a ton of situations. I do think this is legitimately strong utility. It's tempting to say also that it is good infiltration, right? Because the ability to pass through walls and to interact with people there is good infiltration ability. However, you can't use this, you can only use this once per short rest, which does limit its usefulness, right? If you etherealness into a castle and then can't etherealness out until you take a 1 hour rest, there's a high chance that that goes poorly. So it's not a cinch in either of those categories, right? But I do think this is a great feature. It's a great 7th level feature for some of what the Horizon Walker is trying to do. Distance Strike is going to allow you to teleport up to 10 feet away from yourself before each of your attacks on your turn. So that is to say, like, when you take the attack, you can teleport and then make that attack. This is super useful. I kind of wish it allowed you to like have advantage on the attacks when you did that, but c'est la vie. It's mostly a fun mobility feature, I guess. And then Spectral Defenses, you can use your reaction to give yourself resistance to a damage type basically once per turn or once per round when you take damage. So that's really good for survivability, which we like, but nothing else that we were doing was related to survivability, and this is a 15th level feature, so that's kind of nothing. Overall, I really want to love this class more. I don't think it really contributes well to damage. I don't think that its utility is so great that it is worth like mentioning as a utility character. And I don't think the infiltration is that strong either, especially because Distant Strike requires you to be making attack actions. It's not a stealthy thing to do. And although you've got Misty Step and you've got Etherealness, these are not in and of themselves going to get you out of trouble, and they're resource intensive to use. So I kind of think Horizon Walker is baseline. The Hunter subclass is going to give you choices at each level. I'm going to talk broadly about those choices rather than going in depth to each option. Hunter's Prey is mostly a damage bonus, either adding a d8 or allowing you to make an extra attack on another creature, or if you want to be Giant Killer, you can make a reaction attack when someone tries to hit you and misses. So you're boosting your damage with your 3rd level feature at Hunter, and you're choosing what kind of boost you want. At 7th level, Defensive Tactics is going to give you a defensive advantage, either making opportunity attacks with disadvantage, giving you a +4 to subsequent attacks from a target, or giving you advantage on saving throws against being frightened. So again, you're sort of being able to choose which sort of defensive utility you've got going. At 11th level, you get to choose a multi-attack, either Volley, where you sort of like hit an area of effect, or Whirlwind Attack, where you hit everyone around you. That volley is almost always going to be a better option, but it does kind of require you to be a ranged ranger. And then finally, at 15th level, you're going to get a boost to your defenses, either through evasion or the ability to redirect attacks, or through uncanny dodge, so like borrowing some rogue features, essentially. The thing I like about the Hunter is that you can customize the Hunter to build the character that you want for the campaign that you're in. If you want multi-target damage, you can build that in. If you want to fight giants, you can build that in. If you want to be the tank of the party, your best bet with Ranger is probably the Hunter and strategically selecting some of these defensive features. The thing that I don't like about the Hunter is, taken in isolation, any one string of these features will make for kind of a meh subclass. I would say the power level isn't necessarily super up there. I love taking the Hunter on my builds when I'm multi-class because I like to mix in some of the powerful features from other classes and amplify them with the Hunter. Especially if you want to be making a lot of attacks as a Ranger, the Hunter is the best way to do that, which is phenomenal. But you can tell a lot of these are frontline, a lot of these are damage. So we do get boosts in those areas, but we don't get anything else. Our Monster Slayer is another option from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Monster Slayer magic is going to give you protection from evil and good, Zone of Truth, Magic Circle, which are all not great spells, and then Banishment, which is pretty good at 13th level. In my opinion, the standout feature of this subclass is Hunter's Sense, which says you can magically discern how best to hurt a creature. You choose a creature you can see, and you immediately learn whether the creature has immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities, and what they are. And then you can use this number times equal to your wisdom modifier. So you are getting a couple uses of this. So you can essentially train on a new boss monster that you guys have encountered, something that you've never fought before, and you can intuitively know, oh, it's vulnerable to cold damage, or oh, it's vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, and help your party to defeat it much faster. I actually think that this is like a very powerful feature, and I'm going to categorize it as support. The way that I've categorized support on a lot of other things, like if you haste someone, you are helping them to do more damage. In the same way, if you are able to tell someone what damage types will do less or what damage types will do more, you are helping them to do more damage. So this is a sort of like metatextual support feature, which I kind of love. It's really good, in my opinion. The only thing is, lots of campaigns are sort of themed. So let's say you got a lot of undead, and everyone already knows you don't use poison on undead. You use radiant damage if you can, or you're in, these temples of elemental evil, and someone's going, oh, don't use fire on the fire elementals, and your party's like, I know. And you're like, but did you know you could use cold? And they're like, yeah, I'm on it. I've got it. So it is a little situational on whether or not this information is a secret or whether it is kind of obvious to everybody at the table. And if it is obvious, then your character is not really shining in that scenario, right? Because this feature is just not useful. So it's a bit swingy depending on the campaign. I think you can be smart about it, think about your DM and about the campaign and decide whether this subclass is going to benefit. But I like it. You're also getting another feature at 3rd level, which is Slayer's Prey. Basically, as a bonus action, you designate a creature, and then each time you hit that creature with a weapon attack, it takes an extra d6 of damage from the weapon. So it's a lot like Hex, but concentration free, which is great. Hex people take and use and do damage with. You are basically going to be getting 2 attacks at level 5 and staying just about there, unless you have something that gives you a bonus action attack. So generally speaking, this is adding, at most 2d6 of damage per turn, which is good. It's definitely a bonus. It's nice. But it's not game-breaking by any means, and not going to bump you up in damage tier. We are getting Supernatural Defense at level 7. What a weird trend of Ranger subclasses that they are getting their defensive features at level 7, like all the subclasses. Isn't that a little strange? Anyway, Resilience against the prey assaults on your mind and body. Basically, whenever the target of your Slayer's Prey, which is that bonus action feature, forces you to make a saving throw, you can add a d6 to your roll, which is nice. And definitely nice for like boss fights, right? Like that's really what this Monster Slayer is speaking to, is it is like the person you want in your party if you're going up against an unknown boss monster, which is cool. Very cool. And saves are important. It's important to make your saves. And if the big boss monster is casting something on you, you want to make that save. So the extra d6 is nice. Like, I think that's good. But it is a little bit situational, right? It is not going to come up in every session. It might not even come up in every campaign. Who knows? We're going to get at 11th level Magic User's Nemesis that allows us to counter magic, basically like do a little counter spell on enemies within 60 feet of us as a reaction. So they've got to make a saving throw against our spell save DC. If they fail, the spell or teleportation is thwarted. So we get to do a little counter spell. Unfortunately, this is a once per short rest feature, so it's actually not as useful as a character with counterspell on their person. Neat that this is on a character, right? Slayer's counter is pretty fun. Essentially, if the focus of your Slayer's prey makes you make a saving throw, which you're already rolling a d6 for, right? You can make an attack on them first, like as a reaction. They cause a save and you make an attack. If your attack hits, you succeed on the save automatically. So basically, it's allowing you to substitute an attack roll for your saving throw, and then also make the saving throw, and then also add a d6 to that saving throw. So you are not failing your saves at level 15 against your Slayer's Prey, which is so cool. I really love this. And it's a very good, you can tell, like, Magic User's Nemesis, like Slayer's Counter, Supernatural Defense, all of these things together, like, you are the anti-Lich. You are the counter to high-level spellcasting characters, and a lot of high-level characters are spellcasters. So this is great. Like, it's a great subclass, but it is situational. It is specific to those sessions and those encounters when this is the type of thing you're facing, right? In those scenarios, I would take this over most other Ranger subclasses, even the Gloomstalker. If I don't know whether I'm going to be in that scenario or not, it's a harder bet. Alrighty, last one up is the Swarmkeeper. So the Swarmkeeper is going to have a gathered swarm. So what this swarm does is it allows you to use it in one of three ways when you make an attack action and hit with that attack. You can deal an extra d6 of damage, which is good. You can push them up to 15 feet horizontally, which is a huge amount of distance. That is an incredible push that your swarm is making there. And then you can move yourself 5 feet by the swarm, which feels weird, right? Shouldn't it be the opposite a little bit? Like your swarm pushes a little bit on that guy, but you, like, leaning into it can go 15. I don't know. Anyway, so there's some mobility and, like, utility going on here, and movement on the battlefield can be a very potent thing to do, right? For your Swarmkeeper magic, you're getting some great spells. You're getting Fairy Fire at 3rd level, which is, of course, a phenomenal spell for giving your party advantage and being supporting. You're going to get Web, which is a great way to shut down some enemies. Gaseous Form is okay utility, and Arcane Eyes is useful for infiltration and information gathering. At 7th level, Writhing Tide, it basically gives you flying speed as a bonus action, which is great, but it's only of 10 feet. So you're not flying very fast, but you can fly, and it lasts for 1 minute. This is good utility. Flying is useful. Flying without having to cast spell slots is useful. You can only use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, though. Mighty Swarm at 11th level is going to increase the damage of those initial abilities. If you choose to have them do damage, it's going to increase to a d8. That's a very small increase. If the creature fails its saving throw against being moved, you can also knock it prone, which is very useful. It can give you advantage or your allies advantage if they're within 5 feet. And then if you're moved by Gathered Swarm, it gives you half cover, which is a great defensive benefit. And I think that's the biggest increase of the three. It's also probably to the weakest of the three originals. So I think this kind of evens out those options a little bit more. And then 15th level, something about 15th level is getting resistance to damage. But you can use your reaction to give yourself resistance to a hit, and then vanish into your swarm and teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 30 feet of you, which is very cool, very flavorful, very fun, and very good defensive ability. So those are the Rangers. So much of the Ranger subclass and the base Ranger is focused around damage, but it seems to be the area in which Wizard of the Coast is most reluctant to give out those big numbers, those big like +5s to damage. It's all D4s and D6s and upgrading to a D8 and it's just it's difficult to have that Ranger scale in their damage. The Ranger's utility and infiltration are already really, really high from the base Ranger. So boosting those takes a lot of effort and takes a lot of features to do. The frontline potential of the Ranger feels like something that is latent right underneath the surface, and I think there are so few Rangers that lean into the idea of running into the melee and being that like frontline Ranger. But I feel like that is something that is bubbling under the surface of the class, and it just doesn't have a subclass to support it. Amazing to see that we do at least have one great Negotiator on the roster, and that there is a little bit more support than you would imagine from a Ranger. Still, this class has got to be one of the least impressive in terms of boosts from the baseline. I hope that we will see some greater boosts with the Rogue next time.